Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining us today, he is a two-time Olympian, three-time Olympic gold medalist. He is a four-time world champion, eight-time total world champion, four-time long course world champion, NCAA champion, the first man ever under 1 minute and 30 seconds in the 200-yard freestyle. Today, we are sitting down with Blake Pieroni. How's it going, Blake?
Good. Wow, that was quite an intro. Thank you.
Right off the bat, you got a big announcement. Blake, you want to say it in your own words?
Yeah, so I'm retiring from the sport of swimming. Kind of made that decision around January. I've been really happy with my career in the sport. Even from the time I was young, I'd always wanted to go to the Olympics and achieve that dream twice. And I was forced to take some time away from the sport due to an injury. And I kind of realized during that time that I don't really miss swimming as much as I probably should have to kind of stay in the sport, and had a lot of people telling me, oh, the next Olympics is only 2 years away or whatever. But really, I don't have that, that deep passion for the sport to be the best that I possibly could be anymore, and pretty happy with my career where it is.
It's funny because, as you said, there's this shortened Olympic cycle, and it's like, oh, you could stick it out for just a couple more years, but if, like you said, if you're not really into it or really loving it, like 2 years is a long, long time.
Yeah. And it's really hard for me to motivate myself with additional Olympic medals. That was never really a dream as a kid. It was always just go to the Olympics, be an Olympian, not, oh, I need 4 medals or I need 5 medals or whatever. And so, yeah. I know It seems kind of stupid, but that's just how it was for me.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like I had accomplished that in 2016 and 2021. So I felt pretty accomplished with my career.
Did you ever, obviously you had the injury. Can you tell me about the injury? I know you had surgery for it, I think. You were in New York for it for a while, but to tell us a little bit about this injury.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure where it came from or why it happened, but I ended up having a piece of cartilage in my knee that was kind of broken off and lodged in my knee joint in kind of a weird spot. So it was constantly giving me pain anytime that I would bend past 90 degrees or put any kind of load on my right leg. And so that was just causing me a lot of issues. And I ended up needing surgery. And that was kind of a long process on figuring out what kind of surgery it would be and where it would happen. USA Swimming did a great job with all of that stuff. Ended up having surgery in Salt Lake City, Utah. It went well. It was arthroscopic, so they didn't have to do any kind of huge incision and flip over the kneecap, which we were initially thinking that's what was going to have to happen, which would have been a year recovery time. But really, I only had a week in crutches, and then started maybe 2 weeks in crutches, and then started walking again. And now I got my full range of motion back. So one of the things that would signify that I had full range of motion was to be able to sit on my ankles and just to bend the knee all the way. And so now I'm back to strengthening it, getting my right leg back to where my left leg is.
Is there a noticeable difference?
Oh, there was. I mean, you could see it. And I had so much muscle waste because I couldn't strengthen it at all from a long time ago when I was hurting. And then, the surgery and not being able to walk and all that. So yeah, I was doing leg press just the other day. And then we have an alternating leg press, and my left leg can do 100 plus pounds on this leg press, no problem. And my right leg is just completely weak. It's at 30 pounds.
Whoa. Yeah. Well, glad to hear that everything went well, that it wasn't super invasive, and obviously that you're back on the mend now and ready to strengthen it up again. That's great. So congrats on that.
Appreciate that.
Were you training after Tokyo and before this injury came along, were you kind of training as normal, thinking you were going to keep going?
Not really. After Tokyo, I was pretty, I don't want to say burnt out, but I think everyone was a little bit in need of a break with the, postponed Olympics, COVID, all the COVID craziness and everything like that. So I ended up going to the World Cups, but I really wasn't like training much at all, really. And then I came back, and I don't know what month it was, like October, November, December, and I couldn't get myself to come to practice. I didn't want to go to practice. I was like, what for? I felt like I was done. I felt accomplished. And so it was really in January where I was like, okay, I need to like look at this and, just see if I'm ready to be done or not.
Mm-hmm. And so then, like you said, ultimately, you're like, I'm really not as motivated as I should be. When you took some time to kind of sit down and say, is this the right time for me? Did anything come up from your career? Any highlights that stuck out, or just what did come up for you in that soul searching process?
Highlights from the career has never like been like, I don't know. I don't get like a whole lot of satisfaction from like, yeah, winning NCAAs and going to the Olympics was huge. Going to the Olympics would probably be the biggest highlight, I would say, for me personally. But I would say one of the things that I kind of missed the most and haven't had for a long time was being part of like the IU swim team and being part of the team in general. Winning our first Big Tens my junior year, and then winning senior year and trying to win NCAAs as a team was really fulfilling personally. And I would imagine that's something that a lot of pros struggle with after leaving their college days. Because I know I did.
Yeah, which is kind of funny, because even though you switched from being on the college team to being a professional, you were still around the college team, and you were and IU had a huge post grad group, still does. But what were the differences for you that really made that difference of, oh, I don't really feel like I'm with the team, or I'm a part of the team, even though I'm with them, I'm training with them on a day-to-day basis?
Well, in some ways, like training with them on a daily basis kind of made it worse, because you felt like you were on the team and training with them every day, and then you're not going to any meets with them. You're going to pro swims on your own. You're getting, your own hotel room, all of your stuff's on your own. You're not, maybe you're at some of the meets with them during the summer times, like nationals or things like that. But in some ways it almost makes it worse, because you feel like you are on the team, you're training with them every day. And there's other pros that you train with, but that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah. And so you get I feel like that's something people don't tell you about, that transition from college to being a professional. It's like, it's much more independent from just everyone I've talked to. You kind of have to find yourself and really do it for yourself versus doing it for a team or doing it with a team. Was that something that you kind of, I don't know if struggled is the right word, but experienced throughout those 3 years from 2018 to 2021?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say like the current structure of pros being with the college team is fine. I don't know if it's necessarily optimal. I don't know if there would be like another kind of structure that could be set up where it's more so just pros, and pros have like their own coach and own facilities, because it's just not financially viable for most professionals. So that's kind of, if to compare it to NFL, and it's not a great comparison, but like if you graduated college and went to the NFL, but you were still like training and lifting and doing all the stuff with your college team, it's a little strange. Maybe not ideal. Not strange. I don't want to say that, but I'm saying like if there was endless amounts of money out there for swimming, that this problem could definitely be solved with, you're seeing a number of people go to ASU and other groups where a lot of pros can get together. And I don't know if there are like pro only practices, but I think that would make it so much harder on the college coaching staff, because they're not really like getting paid any extra to coach these pros. And it's really just kind of taking away time from the college team in some ways. The college team does benefit to train with the pros and, and racing them, Olympians on a daily basis. I don't know. I just don't, it's fine. It's what we have right now. And it's worked. It's worked well. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it was interesting because we were just talking the other day about how Britain, for example, has these national training centers where you that is what you do. You know, it's funded by British Swimming, and it's professionals. You know, it's people who are not focused or are not competing at a university team, who are training for the Olympics and for world championships. And it's usually smaller groups, but it is those really high caliber athletes. And it is, you know, they have a separate coach that's just for them. And we were kind of questioning why the US hadn't adopted that model. Or, I mean, I think they tried to in 2010 once, and it did not go well. But it's just interesting how it works different in different countries.
Yeah. That's a good point. I had heard that they had tried that before. I'm not sure why it wasn't so successful. I would imagine it would just be the kind of resources to put towards something like that. But I think it would be very popular. Yeah, it would be difficult to, I'm sure there are coaches out there that would want to do it. It would be like kind of strange swimming for a coach, you know, your entire college career, and then not really knowing much about the coach that this group was going to go under. I mean, there could be like a designated, I don't know what you would call them, like high performance coach, where it just coaches pros that most people like, but a lot of people have different training, you know, training segments, how they like to train, philosophies. It'd just be difficult, I think, in terms of the resources.
Definitely. And so, yeah, I'd like to get your take on that, because you were someone who did train with your college coach. Again, you guys had a great college team. You had a great pro group to train with. I've been to Bloomington several times. It's a cool town to be at. And so you stayed with Ray and with the IU coaching staff throughout your career, but then you also did things like go to the World Cup or compete in ISL, where I'm guessing you were either coaching yourself or communicating with other coaches, but you know, you're kind of in charge of yourself. Or with ISL, you kind of got to experience different coaches. So what do you think you gain from going to another coach or being coached by other coaches? And do you think swimmers would do that? Right. That's kind of the question, because a lot of swimmers do stay with their college coaches because that's what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think swimmers would do that, like to answer the second part of your question. But like kind of when you go to these things like World Cups and ISL, the other coaches that you're kind of getting directions from aren't really writing like a season's worth of practices for you. So they're like, you're not really sure. I mean, they're kind of giving more vanilla practices that most people would write, I would say. And that's mostly just because they don't want to try any of their, I don't know, secret practices or any kind of their trademark sets or anything like that on you, because what you've done so far has already worked. So I don't know. It would just be, it's a little bit different from ISL and World Cups because you don't have a full season of, you know, practices and weights really too. I almost never have a coach write any kind of lifting or dryland program for you outside of your home coach.
Yeah. Are there any, looking back, are there any coaches that you wish you could have had an opportunity to train with, either for a few weeks or for a season or for a quad or anything like that?
Yeah, I would have liked to train with a bunch of them. I mean, it's kind of silly from their perspective, is like, why would I let this guy come in and train with our group for 3 weeks kind of thing? Or, you know, like a month, that would be kind of difficult. I wouldn't name like any names, but there's a bunch of coaches, you know, that led top 10 NCAA programs that I would have loved to train with for like a month or plus, but that's all right.
Yeah. So looking back on your career, I know you said you weren't big into highlights, but do you feel like there are lessons that stick out to you, or just things that you learned throughout this career that you'll take with you beyond swimming, whatever direction you're going in?
Yeah, I think there's some lessons that I kind of learned about myself, and then more like, obviously there's generic lessons like work hard and that kind of thing. But several lessons that I kind of learned about myself, I would say, is I really like being a part of small teams, and teams that are highly motivated to achieve whatever goal is set forward. Um, yeah. And then I realized that I could always kind of get more out of myself when the team is relying on you for something. It's kind of one of the reasons I liked relays so much, and being on teams like, USA national teams. So I feel like I learned a lot about myself through the kind of 8 years, I would say. Well, maybe plus for high school, college, and professional. Um, Other generic, kind of things that everyone learns, obviously time management. I would say that the student athlete portion of my life so far has probably been the most difficult, on all fronts, with school, swimming, social life, whatever. That was the most difficult. And some people think that, your schedule gets much easier once you become a professional. And that's good and bad. You have to be even more diligent about doing the things that you're supposed to. But yeah, I learned a lot of those kind of normal lessons that most people would learn just from being on a team in college.
Yeah. One of those small teams that you were on was the Mizuno family. You were sponsored by Mizuno. You're repping them right now. What was it like to be a part of a suit company like Mizuno that is so infamous for their suits in the college racing world, on the international racing stage? I feel like you were one of the first people who wore Mizuno for a long, long time, and then finally was sponsored by them, announced a deal with them. Can you tell us about your partnership with them throughout that pro career of yours?
Yeah, that meant a lot to me. And I think I started wearing their suits maybe in December of 2016 at Short Course Worlds. And I wore the suit, and I had a great Short Course Worlds. And I was like, oh, this suit is different than any of the ones I've had before. And I had tried like all of the suits at the time. And I just had kept wearing them, and happy to have that partnership after I graduated college. And they've been there for me every step of the way, and whatever I needed in terms of suits or any kind of, support. And I've just always loved their suits. So it was a pretty easy decision on my side.
Yeah, I think there were a few athletes and certainly a lot of fans who were really excited and honestly a little jealous. They're like, "Oh man, now Blake, gets to wear Mizuno," which the undercurrent. I don't want to nix anything, but the undercurrent is like it. There's a good chance that's the best suit on the market, at least for the men, in terms of racing. And
Yeah.
so
It's funny because a lot of the college teams, like at NCAA's, have to wear whatever suit their college is sponsored by. And you know how many times there'd be people going up being like, I would have won if I don't know if they would have won, but like they want to wear Mizuno and they're not allowed to.
exactly. Yeah. And so that's I feel like you were again one of the first ones who actually got to wear Mizuno because you were sponsored by them, which
Right.
made it even cooler. Just other parts of that pro career of yours. What do you feel like you learned in terms of being able to navigate? You mentioned just being more diligent than when you were a student athlete because your schedule frees up. Obviously, you have to kind of navigate being on your own versus being on a team in terms of just the social aspect and the travel aspect. Are there any other parts of your pro career that you would like to share about? If someone's like, oh, what should I expect if I get that opportunity to extend my career past college or high school or whatever their next step is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can share a few things that I think I've learned or that I have learned. I would say that there's a larger sense of ownership in the way that kind of all of your success and failures kind of are on your shoulders. And there's, no one's going to make you come to practice. You're not going to get in trouble by anyone. But if you want to go best times, you want to make these teams, you better show up and put, as much work in as possible. And really all of that ownership lays on your shoulders. It's completely up to you. So that can come with a heavy weight to it. Some people love it. I liked it a lot because I felt like all of my successes were directly attributed to my effort. Some of the other things that I learned just kind of a lot about the world. I mean, traveling to different countries by myself. That was one of the, I think in 2018 was one of the first times I had ever flown international by myself. No one that I knew, like waiting on the other side for me. I just had to get an Uber to the hotel, like when I landed, and I think it was in Russia. And it was kind of like eye-opening experience. Just, yeah, I mean, I'm on my own, kind of thing. Maybe it taught me a little bit how to be more independent. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, is there a part of your career that stands out to you that was the hardest or the hardest to get through, just in terms of physically or mentally, motivation wise, where you were at in life outside of the pool, whatever it was there a period in your career where you're like, man, this was tough, but I did get through it?
I think for me, the hardest parts of my swimming career were always when kind of friendships were lost because I kept going on in swimming and other people kind of dropped out of the sport. And like, when you're a student athlete, there's not a lot of time for people that aren't really in swimming. I mean, it's tough to have relationships outside of swimming, just kind of with anybody. And the people that we lost from the team, my 4 years in undergrad, were probably the hardest years, not necessarily physically, but that was always challenging mentally. It's like I still love swimming. I'm going to move forward in the sport, but it's really hard to see when your friends kind of leave the sport and they don't have any, I don't know, they hate the sport or they just have a negative connotation to it when they leave, but it's hard to maintain those relationships. It's really hard. So that would be the hardest part for me. Physically, probably just like the November, December, January, like training parts each year, especially in Indiana, it can get pretty gray and cold and don't see the sun a whole lot. I much prefer swimming outside. So those months were always hard every year, but it wasn't too crazy because you knew it would end. But yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense to me that it would be really difficult to connect with other people, especially when you're still heavily involved in the sport. Those people who do drop off and have a sour taste in their mouth from swimming, because it is really hard and it can be really monotonous. And I see how people get burnt out all the time. And I feel like that's something we don't talk about very much is maintaining those friendships or losing those friendships, just because, again, you went through every stage of the sport. You were swimming at a high level in high school, you swam in college, you were professional. And like you said, every step along the way, you have people who are not taking those steps with you.
Right. And I mean, you are gaining more friends like in the sport of swimming as you go to, meets with USA Swimming or Olympic Games, things like that. But when you there's a big world out there outside of the sport of swimming, and the sport of swimming is kind of small. And like when you go meet with these other people, you realize how all you really have to talk about with them is swimming, and they don't know anything about swimming. And it's like, what else do you have to talk about? And that was kind of weird. It's like, so how's your day going? Kind of, you're gonna talk about swimming, like this person went this time, blah, 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 blah. And it's tough. I don't really have much advice on this thing. It's like relationships are hard, especially when when someone leaves the sport, not necessarily on the best terms. You're not going to want to call them up and be like, hey, do you want to talk about swimming? And they'll be like, no.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I have to ask, speaking of swimming, did you watch World Championships or European Championships?
I didn't watch many of the races, but I followed the results a little bit. Yeah, not as closely as I would typically have, but I saw a lot of the world records. The 17-year-old kid that's on fire, 142 is just, that's mind-boggling, especially geez, yeah. is that what you were referencing, or any kind
Oh
of?
yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. I mean, as someone who did the 100 and 200 freestyle long course, just yeah, I wanted to get it. Was wondering if you had any specific thoughts on 17-year-old David Popovich and his world record 100 free, his 142.9 200 free.
That's crazy, because I don't, I mean, yes, he broke the world record in the 100 and not in the 200, but to me, I think maybe the 200 is like more impressive. Just, I don't know, maybe because I think the 200 is harder, but it just seems like his stroke is perfect and he's so strong and he just grabs so much water. Like I said, I didn't watch all the races, but yeah, pretty amazing swims.
I agree, especially, or I can definitely see where you're coming from, especially because so many people have gotten so close to that world record. Like we've seen five
Right.
different guys go 47-1 or better, I think. And so it, and people have been kind of knocking on the door, but we've seen one guy go 143-1. We've seen one guy go 143 since 2009, and
Yeah.
now David's the second.
And I watched, what was it? I don't know if it was in 2008 or 2009 when, I think it was in 2008 when Michael went 142.9. And that was such a dominating swim. I mean, it was like he won by a ton, and it was a super suited. I mean, it was a super suited record from Michael Phelps, like in the Olympics when he won 8 golds, and a 17-year-old kid just went faster in a textile suit. You know what I mean? It's just like, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep. I saw that and I said, yeah, I'm retiring.
That was actually the stick that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go from here. But speaking of where you're going from here next, what is the plan? So you made this decision in January, and obviously you've kind of been citing it for a while now, but you're announcing it now. And so do you have plans for the future outside of the pool?
Yeah, I've actually been working with a private equity real estate company in Indianapolis. So it's about like an hour north of, you've been to Bloomington, hour north of Bloomington, that I've really enjoyed. Like I said earlier, I really like working with small teams, and there's 10 of us right now. And so, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. People ask, like, how did you make the transition from swimming to real estate? And I say, I don't really know. But now my dad and grandfather have owned and operated kind of single family homes and duplexes for a long time. So I grew up like fixing up rental houses and duplex and painting walls and things like that. So I was kind of exposed to it from a young age. And then, yeah, just really kind of hit it off with this company, and it's been doing great, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
What's your timeline on that in terms of when did you start with them? And is this something that you had sought out, or did it just kind of fall into place?
Yeah, I hadn't really sought it out at all. I was kind of just connected through a family friend. And I started, I don't know, actually in January. So I've been there about 8 months now. Yeah, I didn't really seek it out at all. It's funny because like I don't even have a resume. I never like made one. I don't know what I would put on it. Yeah, I went to the Olympic Games. Is that like, that's not related to anything at all. Have a degree in biology. That's not related at all. But yeah, just pretty grateful that Spencer, the founder, president, took me in, and that it's worked well so far.
So this may not be a great example of this, but a topic that's discussed more, I think, now is life after swimming, and like preparing, from your professional career as a swimmer to your professional career as literally anything else aside from an athlete. Had you thought about that when you thought about retiring? It's like, did you think about what was next, or did you have an idea of what you wanted to do before this opportunity came along?
No, I hadn't really thought. If I did think about it, it wasn't very hard, not for very long. I had tossed around the idea of coaching because I still love swimming, and I still want to be around the sport in some capacity. So I had thought about the idea of coaching, just kind of decided against it. It's a tough gig. So those are really, yeah, that's really the only thing I had thought about. Maybe I should have thought about it more when I was in college, and I don't know. it's kind of weird. Like if you're planning stuff after you're done, you're putting some effort and energy towards, life after swimming. I guess it's definitely something that you should do, but I think when you're in it, you got to pour your heart and soul into swimming and just live in that world as, get as good as you can, try as hard as you possibly can. And I don't know, for me, I'm just the kind of person, I'll pick my head up and look around when I'm done kind of person. That's not advice though. I mean, that's probably not a good idea. Don't take any of my advice that you've heard on this.
That's Blake Pieroni.
Yeah.
So I am curious, you said you got a degree in biology. Was there a reason for that specific degree?
Yeah, initially when I went to school, I thought I wanted to go into healthcare. My mom is a nurse practitioner, and for a number of years, she worked in the emergency room, and I shadowed her and just in the emergency room a bit when I was in high school. And I liked it a lot, and I still kind of like it, but after I made my first Olympic team in 2016, I realized I was like, I'm going to just struggle through to finish my undergrad. I don't want to go back to school after, whatever. I was thinking of being a physician assistant, which I think is only 2 years after your undergraduate degree. But at the time I was so ready to be done with school. I really wanted to focus on swimming and put all my time into that. Didn't go down that path.
Fair enough. I hear you. I was not a educated, motivated person.
Yeah. And by the time you get to college, you've already been in school for so long. I feel like it was the only thing I'd ever done. Like the idea of more school after college. I don't want to be like a permanent student,
Agreed. Yeah. And I think getting a rest from that for a while helps too. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll go back to school later. Yeah. But, it's like, I would like a break from it. Like you said, you're in school from age 5 to 18, and then the 4 more years after that. And then like, now it's more. So
yeah.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Well, Blake, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with us about your career and what you've taken away. Is there anything we've missed? Do you have any parting thoughts before we sign off today?
I don't think so. Yeah. I appreciate you having me on here. Like I said, I still like the sport of swimming. I still watch results and everything like that. So if there's anything you want me to do or come in and give my 2 cents on anything that's happening, I'm more than happy to do that.
Oh yeah. We'll definitely have you on.
Got a lot of time
one
now.
Thing or another. Yeah. Just doing real estate stuff. You've got plenty of time to come on and commentate for us. So,
I could commentate some of the Bobby Fink finishes. That'd be fun. He's a 50 behind, but don't worry.
That'd be awesome. I'm pretty sure you have a great Rowdy Gaines impression, right?
I get it from Caleb, actually. Have you heard Caleb's?
I think I've heard about Caleb's.
Okay. I think I just impersonate Caleb's version of Rowdy because Caleb's is good. It's really good.
We'll have to get that on camera one day.
Yeah, you gotta get him on the podcast and have him do it.
That sounds awesome. Well, yeah, again, Blake, thank you for taking the time, and it's always great talking to you.
No problem. Happy to talk with you.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.